Iran is in America's crosshairs. President Trump's administration launched airstrikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels this weekend, killing at least 53 people, including children. Iran is the Houthis' main benefactor. The president took to Truth Social yesterday and wrote the following: "Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen, who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences. And those consequences will be dire. The Houthis have attacked and targeted U.S. shipping vessels in the Red Sea for the past 2 years. In June 2024, they sunk one of our ships, marking the second one overall."
The Houthis had stopped the attacks after the Israeli-Hamas ceasefire in January. With Israel cutting off humanitarian aid to Gaza, however, the Houthis said they would restart their efforts.
Per Newsweek, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said in a statement, "I warn all enemies that any threat being carried out will draw a tough, decisive, and devastating reaction." National Security Advisor Mike Waltz went on ABC this Sunday to discuss the Iran nuclear weapon issue. Here he is.
Well, what the president has has repeatedly said is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. All options are on the table to ensure it does not have one. And that's all aspects of Iran's program. That's the missiles, the weaponization, the enrichment. They can either hand it over and give it up in a way that is verifiable, or they can face a whole series of other consequences.
Trump had also sent a letter to Iran giving them two options: negotiate an end to their nuclear program, or the U.S. military will destroy it. In response to the situation, Iran's foreign minister wrote on X, "The United States government has no authority or business dictating Iranian foreign policy. That era ended in 1979. Biden was last year bamboozled into handing over unprecedented $23 billion to a genocidal regime, more than 60,000 Palestinians killed, and the world holds America fully accountable. End support for Israeli genocide and terrorism. Stop the killing of Yemeni people." Tucker Carlson wrote on X, "A bombing campaign against Iran will set off a war, and it will be America's war. Don't let the propagandists lie to you." Political commentator Mark Levin, another conservative, on the other hand, writing from a different perspective, "For the apologists of the Iranian terror regime, a nuclear warhead on an intercontinental missile has the capacity to kill millions of Americans. To pretend otherwise is unconscionable and insane. President Trump is 100% right. Iran must never get a nuclear weapon. I stand with him, period." So we are entering some dangerous territory, Marianne, with tensions again escalating. The Houthi attacks had been halted during the Israel-Gaza ceasefire, which was a good thing, but now we are targeting them again. The Houthis are, I agree with Trump, as described, as a terrorist thug group that should not be targeting our ships at all. However, I want to live in the real world, a world in which the American people do not, I don't think, desire increased military conflict with Iran. And actually, this is not a left-right thing. I saw Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeting about this yesterday, saying I've not talked to a single. Let me pull up her exact tweet. She says, "I have not heard a single American say they want another war in the Middle East. Not one. All I hear is them demanding America first. I don't support going to war on behalf of other countries. I support peace. It's in my job title." So there is not a firm desire, I don't think, for out-and-out war with Iran. So let's let cooler heads prevail and not have that happen. How about that?
Yes, and there are very important things to realize here. Obama, along with John Kerry helping him, had negotiated an Iran nuclear deal. In Trump's first administration, he pulled us out of it. So now it's outrageous for him saying you've got to negotiate a deal when a deal had been negotiated and all signs were that things were running smoothly. So it was Trump who took us out of that, number one. Number two, Americans are in vast denial and delusion here. Even in that quote from Marjorie Taylor Greene, Americans don't want another war in the Middle East. Hello, Americans, wake up. A war with Iran would not only be fought in the Middle East.
Sure.
These people can come here. We are talking about the bombing of American cities. When most people, particularly Republicans, talk about another war that they don't want, they think it's fought over there. They're thinking Afghanistan, they're thinking of Iraq. War with Iran is not, the president playing this tough guy thing with Iran, and I would agree with you on this. These people have missiles that could reach here. A war with Iran has one of the biggest armies in the world. A war with Iran would be absolutely catastrophic, not only for that part of the world, but for our country as well, and in ways that most Americans are not really registering. This cowboy act on the part of our president is superficially kind of cool.
Well,
he's cowboy and saying what we want. And as you said, at the very least, may cooler heads prevail. The problem we have is that there aren't any cooler heads in this administration. Hegseth isn't a cooler head. He's just a puppet. He's just a sycophant who's going to do whatever.
Trump is himself one of the cooler heads compared to many other people in both the Republican and Democratic parties.
Has been
Despite
in the past,
what he says there, there was also reporting that he has pushed that Netanyahu is of course pushing for him to have out-and-out war with Iran, and Trump saying, I don't really know about that. I don't think so. I don't think I want to do that. Trump has good instincts. Now he tweets aggressively. And that statement is contrary to the America First foreign policy that he ran on, that his actual conservative base wants from him, that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie and other voices of restraint, and Tucker Carlson are calling for restraint, and he should listen to them. He has listened to them in the past, and he is behind the scenes, from what I understand, not going along with what Netanyahu and people like Lindsey Graham, the hawks in the Republican Party, the hawks in the Democratic Party, they want this conflict with Iran. I agree with you that pulling out of the deal was a bad idea. I would not have done that. I was with Rand Paul, who opposed pulling out of it because we did have a deal in place. They should work at getting an even better deal in place, but they shouldn't have gotten out of it in the first place. I agree with you on that. But I'm glad Trump is the president instead of, Lindsey Graham or anyone else in the Republican Party would be more likely to have confrontation with Iran.
So let's start with what you said before. It shouldn't even be a right-left issue.
Yes.
That we don't.
And it's not a right-left issue. Look at all these very right-wing people like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Absolutely. The idea of war with Iran is taking us into a place which is so astonishing. And you said he just tweets, but in part of what he's talked about here, he said that if Iran does not begin negotiations, once again absurd because there were negotiations, if they do not do that, then I think he said we will get rid of them. What he's going to do, as you said, Netanyahu wants that. Netanyahu would love that. Let's go bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran. For Americans to believe that Iran would not respond in ways that would absolutely be devastating and opening a box that would be an era of warfare that is beyond what any of us can even imagine, actually, because we haven't had anything like that on our shores since the Civil War, since 9/11.
We should always keep in mind that the way, and you like myself are very feel very passionately about our founding documents and the Constitution.
Foreign entanglements. Let's stay away from foreign entanglements.
Let's stay away from foreign entanglements. And as you know, it is Congress that is supposed to declare war. A military campaign against Houthi rebels, okay, make the case for it. Say why they're attacking our ships and we should respond. That should be discussed and debated in the halls of Congress and voted on by Congress. And if Congress votes to go to war with the Houthis, then the president would carry it out. And people like Marjorie Taylor Greene could raise objections. That's how it's supposed to work. But they've just completely backed off their responsibility to be determining the foreign policy of the United States and said, whatever the executive does.
Yeah. Well, two things about that.
And that is a scandal as well.
You're absolutely correct, and that began after 9/11, when that was the beginning of Congress completely abdicating its responsibility by saying to George Bush, anything that has to do with terrorism. Now,
that seems downright quaint.
Now
for George. George Bush said, I want you to declare war. You're going to vote on it and discuss it.
Right.
That's crazy by today's standards.
The second thing we have to deal with here is the fact that the Houthis are funded by Iran. The president is right about that. The president is right that it's Iran doing all this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, dealing with Iran, you just cannot deal with Iran with this kind of cowboy mentality. And unfortunately, the Ayatollah was correct. That stopped in 1979. But the American people should realize the reason it stopped in 1979 was because that was the overthrow of the Shah, who was America's puppet, and all of that began when America decided that it had the right for regime change for the democratically elected Mossadegh in Iran, whose sin in the eyes of America at that time was that he thought that the oil in that part of the world should belong to the Iranians. So,
and what we got was even worse. We got an Islamic theocracy.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
great.
But the Americans need to have some historical context, I think.
But I'm not I'm not a bleeding heart. I'm not crying over the Houthis getting. I mean, they started attacking our ships.
Yeah, we understand
They're a thug group. They abduct child soldiers in Yemen. I'm not shedding any tears for them, but I want a realistic foreign policy, and if increased conflict with them means increased conflict with Iran, that is at least something we should acknowledge and discuss. It's not what I'm for, and it is Congress's responsibility, not the president, to consider.
And I think that, and it's interesting because Congress is a deliberative body. This is where you have the difference between a dictator and a deliberative process. A deliberative process, which is essential to democracy, is one in which, as you said, all of these ideas are put out there. People come to understand what is the right saying, what is the left saying, which at our best, we've both got points. And as Eisenhower said, the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative. No president, and like you said, this has been going on for a while, no president should just say about any issue, it's going to be this way because I say so, it's going to be that way because I say so. There's a famous line, and I can't remember who said it, war is too important to be left in the hands of the generals. Although in this case, it's not even about the generals, it's about the president who himself is the commander-in-chief.
The generals should, they carry out, they plan the mission, they do the how it's actually conducted in discussion with the president. Of course, the president has the final say on how it's conducted, but the authorization to do it is debated and discussed democratically by our directly elected representatives.
We must make a stand for that.
Yes.
Robbie and I agree.
We agree on that.
We hope you agree as well.
Up next, what's in a signature? Does it depend on how it is signed? We'll discuss. Stay tuned.